Good evening and welcome to another episode of Apolitically Incorrect Guyana. My name is Kian Jabour. As usual, I'm your host this evening. And Tim is here to join me.
Practically a co-host. But
yeah, 100% a co-host. Actually, I'll do this right on air for all of you. I am not available next week for a couple of weeks, and I'm hoping you can jump in if available. I know it's a Christmas week.
Yeah, you caught me by surprise. I don't know I'm going to be in town.
Oh, you headed out too for Christmas, maybe?
I'm thinking that I gotta make a trip.
I feel like there's a mass exodus going on for this Christmas season. I feel like, the Guyanese. I was actually having this conversation recently. The Guyanese Christmas that we were accustomed to, like we grew up with, and even you. I mean, I know different generations, but I feel like my daughter has a very different experience with Christmas to what we did, and I'd like to say. I sat down with my cousins who all have children and so on, and I did a little breakdown of this and why this might be. And you know what I put it to? I sat down and I did some calculations and I went, if I had a big family, if I had 4 children like my parents did, and I had to hold on. You and I were talking about this actually last week when you told me about meat. There is no way. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know I'm not a poor person, but I cannot afford to do what my parents used to do 10 years ago. Not even less than 10 years, more than 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It just, nobody can afford that anymore.
It's really expensive now. It really is.
To have all your family over for the whole Christmas season, your family fly in the country, your cousins and everybody around. Like, how many people are still doing that?
And we like that big Christmas feed up.
Yeah.
We like to do it again, Old Year's, New Year's. And if you got a family of 5, it gets tough.
I'm not sure. So I'm in the restaurant business. I buy food all the time. And in my restaurant, I'm doing garlic pork and eggnog and pepper pot. And, I'm going to say this publicly. I'm ashamed of what I'm charging for it. Because the cost of pork, the cost of garlic, the cost of the eggnog, like the heavy cream and stuff like that, it's the tray of eggs.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
That's a lot. So it's a good thing that 100,000 has been handed out there.
I mean, but we ain't getting it before Christmas. but the truth is, it's not possible anymore. And I feel like we've lost something.
For me, that's not the bigger issue. The bigger issue is that Georgetown is very stressful at Christmas time.
Oh my gosh.
The traffic is impossible. The police are trying their best. But I actually ran afoul of one of the police on the road today because I was turning right from Church Street into Camp Street. Mm-hmm. And with that bumper to bumper traffic, you simply cannot go into the left lane so that you can go straight on Camp Street.
Right.
And the policeman was insisting I got to turn left because turn right because I'm in the right turn lane to go back up North Road, back where I came from. And I was saying, man, I simply cannot get into that correctly and in the 100 yards distance before I reach you.
Right.
So, he understood at the end.
Yeah. He understood at the end.
They're trying their best.
I do feel bad for a lot of them because I think they're thrown into an ad hoc situation.
And we're a society of bullies if we can be. We are loud, and I think that the police have to respond to that automatically and assume you will do that. If you try to be accommodating, they respond, and sometimes I think they're actually grateful to be interacting with somebody who's trying their best to be reasonable. Yeah. So we got a lot of belligerent drivers, and it gets worse with the high stress situation and the crowded situation at Christmas.
Yeah, absolutely. And the accidents, with more cars in the country, blah, blah, blah. It's bad. It's bad. I've been taking a taxi recently because of my leg, because I'm not driving, and you should hear the horror stories these men talk about.
Today was a day, actually, because I had another incident coming down in Pleasance. And somebody walked across the road too slowly. So the car in front of me, the driver stopped in the middle of the road, opened his door, got out to cuss the man.
The man walking?
Yeah. And the whole lineup of traffic just waiting for this man to stop his tirade, get back in his car, go down his way.
Does that? No. There's a video out on social media. I'm sorry I didn't show it. Of a bus. So clearly a taxi, a car and a bus had an issue right on the East Coast Road, I think. And this guy, the bus, finds his way to cut this car off. And the conductor and the bus driver get out and start beating up the man in his car. In the middle of, like, stop in the middle of the road, block off traffic. And just punching this man in his car. And anyways, luckily the guys were arrested. But nonetheless, I'm like, what is going on? Like, when you see stuff like that, I got a whole bunch of messages from like friends of mine especially in our groups and stuff. And the guys are like, this is what we're like, our biggest fear is like you just driving and somebody just goes crazy and comes out and attacks you. I mean, I don't mean to like speak about this, but something is really happening in society when it comes to people feeling above the law.
Well, we raise our children violently, so they learn to respond violently. And when they become adults, that's the first recourse.
Yeah.
So it starts with how we bring up our children. So that's changing. Thankfully, that's changing. I'm seeing more and more parents that are interacting with their children with smiles and hugs rather than with whips and belts. So hopefully that will change in time. But we are a belligerent, violent society.
That would imply that there's less violence in schools now, and the government just actually had to go on a campaign because of how bad it is.
Yeah.
Right. So, anyways, let's be more positive, I guess. Actually, on the let's jump into the show. On the note of ad hoc systems, everyone gets offended when I go on a tangent and say these people are incapable and they're square pegs and round holes and these people are not intelligent people and these people are thieving and
that's the predicament you're in, Kian.
Friends and families. People get vexed when I say that.
If you're willing to criticize the PPP, you will incur the wrath of the PPP loyalists. And if you're willing to criticize the PNC, you'll incur the wrath of their loyalists.
Oh my gosh. They used to call me your name Lampia Pumpy.
95% of the country is not going to like what you're saying.
Yeah. Oh, you remember when the PPP used to love us in 2020 during the whole saga? They were like, oh my gosh, these guys are stand-up guys, honest, decent people. Doing the right thing. You know, these guys, we love him.
The other side.
And Apno used to cuss me down every day under the tent over the road in the aquatic center. They used to cuss me up about how we are, all the bad words that the PPP are now using.
Traitors, yes.
But now the PPP hate us. Oh man, sorry guys. You know, I my apologies for, being accountable and, unbiased and calling both sides out on, their corruption and their thievery. Anyway, with this being said, I would like to get into the topic now. I'd like to apologize on behalf of all Guyanese. I think this is what it starts. I think we all need to have some empathy. I'd like to apologize to the residents of South Drumveld.
Well, you're making it sound like your fault.
No, it is my fault because as a citizen, it's not, okay, I'm going to be a little ridiculous here. I didn't vote for the PPP, all right? So it's not exactly my fault, and I'm here trying to hold them accountable every week. But I think everybody that did encourage this nonsense needs to feel a level of guilt, because we need to talk about how we got to the point where a big ribbon cutting and big contract signing and people could celebrate, look at the progress and the forward movement of the country. And we have accepted that as progress. But now when the progress has taken shape, we're watching literal lantern posts fall because one, nobody followed the system, or two, there was no system. Okay, and the fact of the matter is, for somebody to have not followed the system, there should have been a system in place to make sure that person was following the system. If you understand what I'm getting at.
I saw you had some pictures.
Yes, can we bring up the one? Sorry, it's just a picture of what's going on in South Drumveld right now. For all of you that don't know, this is
Aubrey Barker Street.
Aubrey Barker. And I'm sorry, let me just show you guys, because I know some of our viewers are not in Guyana, so they might not be understood. This is one of the main roads into one of the largest communities in Georgetown, in which not one, two, three, but multiple lantern posts have fallen, giving this entire community blackout for the last 24 hours, because it happened around last night. So that's what we're looking at. And if we think that this is progress and this is what infrastructure development looks like, let me just take this a step further for you guys. You can come back around. Let me just take this a step further for you guys. And this is what worries me, Tim. these are just lantern posts. Okay? What if it was a bridge?
Well, let's start with what we saw, right? I talk about systems. We had a 5:30 meeting where the president harangued engineers and permanent secretaries and all of that for not doing good jobs and not finishing their contracts on time.
Right.
And the observation that we made in this, sitting right here in this room, was that a contract has a system that you figure out. You have an engineer, and your engineer decides on the design of the structure he wants and how much it'll cost. So he decides if he wants to put steel in the concrete to give it strength. He decides if he wants it to have a sand base to give it stability. He values all of that material. He does an estimate of the labor that will be involved, the time frame. And then with that information, he invites contractors to bid. And the contractors who bid and bid close to his estimate are considered to be qualified because obviously they've done their homework the same way he has and has come up with reasonable figures.
Yeah.
And the lowest qualifying contractor should get a job.
Yeah.
But that's not the end of it. You see, if the engineer has done his job properly, then your lantern post is not going to fall down. So you have to ask yourself, well, what design did he put out to invite bids for?
Right.
If you look at that picture with those lantern posts falling, it's not surprising that more than one fell because the tension wires that are running at the top are heavy and very, very strong.
Yeah.
If one starts to lean and one starts to fall, it pulls the others down. And I'm sure Guyanese have seen that before with the wooden lantern post. A truck knocks one down, all the others start to lean because they're pulled down by the weight of the tension wires and the weight of the pole that fell first. It says a lot, first of all, for the quality of the concrete posts, because the concrete posts, as you see, have held up. They remain in good shape. They can be used again. So whatever contractor built those posts, good for him. But
yeah, no, they did. Actually, right. Good point.
We got to ask, what is the design of putting those holes in the ground, putting those poles in the ground? If you just dug a hole and you stuck that post in there, then the engineer should be fired and you shouldn't get another contract. And those are two different considerations. If you look at designs around the world, there usually is a cross beam at the bottom of the post made of metal, and that fits into a concrete bed, a concrete foundation, and then it is covered with soil. That means that it's not going to move.
Right.
When I look at those posts, I don't see anything like that. And I get the impression of what happens is these boys dig a hole, put the post, measure it upright, and then pour wet concrete around and walk away.
No concrete. Sorry. There was a picture came up just before. There was no concrete. They dug a hole and put the mud on it. That picture is floating around again.
Well, in that case, that's worse yet.
100%.
Because you then have to ask the government, where's your engineer? What design did your engineer come up with?
Right.
How are you attaching and placing these posts in? Did the contractor do what he was supposed to do? And when he was doing it, was the engineer observing to confirm, yes, this job has been well done?
Exactly.
No. If the engineer confirmed the job is well done, according to the technical...
Because that was supposed to go up in one day.
Right.
Those was went up over a series of weeks, so they had to have been checked on.
It goes back to the system that you have created to award these contracts and supervise the performance of the contracts. It goes right back to that.
Correct.
And if you need any more glaring example about a poor system not working, there it is. But I want to say something else about the contractors. I mean, I'll tell you the truth. I'm really fed up driving around on roads that wobbly and got waves. The road at the northern end of Sheriff Street, the roundabout at Kitty. I mean, these are roads that were built recently.
Lamaha Street gone. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Dennis Street. These are roads that are built recently and are seeing serious signs of wear when a road... When you check online, a road is expected to last 15 years without needing any repairs at all before it starts to lose its structural integrity. Why is it after 2, 3, 4 years we got this problem?
Yep.
If the engineer is not doing his job, that's one thing. If the technical specifications of the contract aren't good, that's the government's fault and the government's engineer's fault. But I'll tell you something from the contractor's point of view. We got a seawall that was, we all take it for granted. It keeps the sea out. It was built by a man named Gerald Case. He designed it and built it and put together into a single structure the various plantation seawalls that existed. He did it around 1914, so more than 100 years ago.
Right.
It's still there.
Yeah, I hit it with a motorbike recently. It's strong.
He designed the grinds that go out into the sea that make the sediment settle and reduce the wave action 100 years ago.
100 years ago.
Now, the man wasn't Guyanese. There's a Scotsman who came here, an engineer, designed it, oversaw the construction, and there it is. He's a man who's professional and proud of his job, did a good job, and he should be remembered with gratitude by Guyanese. If a contractor is hired to do shoddy work, and he sees the design is shoddy, and he as a professional is willing to do shoddy work, take his money and walk away. He needs to be remembered just like Mr. Case.
Agreed.
Because he's not a patriot. He is someone who is willing to put money in his pocket to the harm and detriment of Guyana. Good conversation.
All the road builders, exactly.
I really want to say that to the contractors who knowingly are doing shoddy work. Y'all don't call yourself patriots.
No. Call yourself criminal. You know you're doing garbage.
Blame the government if you want for not giving you a fair contract.
Yeah.
Blame the government if you think the specifications in the contract aren't good enough. But if you consider yourself a professional and you want to do a good job, then point it out and do the best you can. But don't associate yourself with something, take money and walk away, knowing that in 2 or 3 years, that thing is already falling apart.
Yeah.
You are doing as much harm to our country as the corrupt people who are allowing you to do it.
Yes. Tim, I cannot agree with that more. And I think that is what needs to happen here. That level of accountability. People need to stop sitting down and pretending like they're just working with the system that they're given, and greed steps in and they do garbage work and have no care in the world other than filling their pockets with money.
Right.
I don't care.
So me sitting here, I got more respect for Mr. Case, who died 50 years ago. I got more respect for him, a Scotsman who came as a professional and did a good job, than for the people who know our Guyanese should be invested in our country. Should be thinking about their children, should be happy to see the infrastructural work going on and want to be part of it, so that in their old age they can look back and say, I built that.
Yes.
Yes. You can't even look back 2 years and say they
you can. Who built the new highway over the river? Like, you know how poorly that thing is built. You know that it should. How could you build a road thinking that that's acceptable? And don't care. Again, but you know, if I start pointing out friends and family and all the big contractors who are not at the meeting, at the 5:30 meeting, there can be a whole lot of conversation, but nobody wants to hear that. Because again, we're living obviously in a situation where, you know what? I ain't able. I really got no repercussions. The fact of the matter is, I can just say it. I sat down and spoke to a person the other day, Tim, and I'm sorry. The person looked at me and said, you know what the biggest problem in this country is? There's not enough cheek left on the government for people to kiss. Okay? And that's not their face, cheek. And it sadly came up because of this Diamond Bar situation. I mean, you got people, Tim, I know you're not on social media as much. Tim, you should see what's going on with Guywa. People ain't bathed, people ain't had water in their yards for weeks now. A man posted a video the other day, he got water coming in his thing like milky coffee for the whole year.
I did see that, yeah.
Tim, these people are suffering and they're watching the diamond ball happen. And we sitting down there and we sitting down there saying, so you live in this lavish life because and let me be honest with you, I'm gonna throw this one out to the public just so they're aware. You know, I'm part of events planning. I started my business in this country doing events, catering. You know why we as private events planners don't hold those type of events? Because it's impossible to be profitable. Okay, it cannot make money. Okay, so what you know there, all that whole idea of, oh, this is a charity event, that event they make no money. Okay, them musicians didn't do it for charity. All right,
the overheads were serious. You can see that right away. It cost a lot.
The decorators, they didn't do it for charity. Okay, so anybody explain the nonsense there, I'm sorry, it doesn't work like that.
But maybe we will see a check produced and handed to some charitable organization that represents the profit from that charity event. We'll wait for it.
No, you know what? It is what it is. It's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. But you know, you're let them eat cake conversation, but nobody don't want to hear that. But we go back to South Rumvelt not even being given. We're watching Empire the same weekend that South Rumvelt is in blackout because they decided. I'm sure. You know what I'm sure of? I'm sure the contractor was at the crystal ball.
Well, don't.
That's why I'm sure
I'm not
of.
going to speculate.
Nah, you don't speculate. I can speculate.
I would like to go forward in terms of how they repair what is there.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the lesson to be learned, first of all, is that there needs to be a standardized method of designing how these poles are installed that involves a steel and concrete-based foundation attached to the posts. They could use bolts, they could use studs, however they want to do it, and then covered. Okay. If they just put in this thing in the soil, there's only going to be one end result.
Okay. You know, this is why you guys like Tim more than you like me, okay? Because Tim is sitting here, giving you the solution to the problem, okay? Tim is saying, this is a system that needs to be put in place. This is how you do it. And we, by no means, are professionals at putting lantern posts in the ground, okay? We're just stating that we are smart enough to know that is the wrong way, right?
It can't be that difficult.
Right. So, I'm sorry. The problem that I have, Tim, is the people that are sitting here, and I'm sorry if you're one of those people that are sitting here saying, man, Kian, you need to come up with more solutions. I am sorry. You know what my solution is? Okay? And again, I guess this might be the business side of me. You like to talk about how PPP are good businessmen. Well, here's my solution. Put people that are actually capable of doing the job to do the job. Do you understand? That's the solution. Kian, you talk about blackouts and how terrible blackouts are. What's your solution? I will hire someone from anywhere in the world, okay? Because guess what? Blackout don't happen all over the world. There are professionals in electricity distribution networks that can come in and they can fix the problem because that's their business. But guess what we got? Anil Nandalal brother-in-law or brother or somebody like that is the CEO of the company, okay? Who we got to the head of Gaisuko, all right? Y'all really believe that these people are the professionals in their fields?
Well, I actually don't like the example you gave because I think he's doing a fair job. I'll tell you the truth.
Go for it. You see?
I'll tell you the truth.
This is why y'all like Tim more than me. All y'all who have blackout out there, this is Tim saying that he's CEO of Gaisuko of GBL is doing a good job.
Well, let me defend that.
Go ahead.
Blackout isn't a new thing in Guyana, is it?
No.
So to blame someone who's been in there for 6 months for a problem that has not been solved for the last 40 years, I think is a bit harsh.
But that's like you give me the same excuse, Tim, as a contractor doing it.
It was the same criticism made of C.S. Narayan Singh with Gaisuko, that Gaisuko was failing. He was put into a company that was failing and was not given the tools to fix it. And it was his fault it continued to fail. That's not fair. We got to try to be fair.
All right.
But we're talking about putting in the simple thing. Installing electricity poles that are concrete, were well made. How do you install them?
Yeah.
Now, any fool of an engineer, if he can't do a design to install this pole in a way that it doesn't fall down, he shouldn't have the job. But you have to start at the beginning too. You're saying,
I like how you're not blaming him, but you're going further. Go deep into it. Blame who I blame.
Qualified people to do the job. But if you take the most qualified engineer in the world and you put him employed and needing his job, he's scared to get fired in the ministry, and the friend of the party man gets the contract, is he going to say to this friend, you didn't do that properly, I'm not signing off so you can't get your money? Because he's going to get a phone call to say, sign it off, get him his money, or you don't get a job tomorrow. So the problem isn't just a simplistic problem.
Blame who you got to blame, Tim. Call the names.
The problem isn't just a simplistic problem of blame the contractor, blame the engineer. It goes back to having an independent engineer who's assured in his job. It goes back to having a design that everybody can see.
Okay.
And then it goes back to overseeing the performance of the contract and monitoring it in a transparent way so that the job is well done.
And why is it not happening?
Because from top to bottom, there is no accountability and there's corruption.
Good.
So I'll give you an example.
Go ahead.
You want to build a road, and I'll use Railway Embankment Road as an example.
Yeah.
It should have 2 layers of asphalt, each layer no less than 2.5 inches thick. That's the most expensive aspect of the thing to buy. And it's difficult to put on. You got to heat it up. You got to roll it. So when you look at the railway embankment road, that within a few years after it was constructed, started showing cracks and strains, and then right now is more patches than road. If you look at anywhere that is broken down, you see a 1-inch thin film of asphalt, and underneath that you see loam. So what happens is that when you have a road that should cost, the engineer does his estimate, and it should cost $100 million. Government says, no, that's too much money. Let's make it 70 million. To get the contract, you bid, and you may be the lowest bid, but you got to give somebody a kickback. So your profit margin goes, and the only way to get back your profit is instead of 2 inches of asphalt, you can only put 1 2-inch of asphalt. But then you realize that the project kind of shoddy anyway. So you put in a whole 2 inches now. You'll only put 1 inch. Because at the end of the day, you know this thing falling apart. But so what you have is you have a project that from the beginning is implemented in a way that is corrupt and can never succeed.
Okay, but Tim, you just said as well that the contractors are to blame because they know they're doing shoddy work and they have to be blamed as well. You just said that about it. So that's why the CEO of GPL has to be blamed as well. You know you're not doing substandard work and you're sitting down there. Obviously, you got to keep your job. You got to get paid. I get you. But at the end of the day, you are part of the system that has broken and is now making the rest of the country suffer.
Well, let me ask you this then. And I think this is where the problem is in Guyana, and it goes back to who is the main employer and who's the main awarder of contracts. Because if you have a job in Guyana, you're a businessman, you can go on to another business, you're self-sufficient and self-contained. You can manage yourself. No one can fire you. But if your job, by virtue of the experience you have, the qualification you have, you can't work on your own, you need a job.
Right.
And if you're at risk of losing your job, where in Guyana do you go to get another one?
No, you gotta leave the country.
So,
just had a conversation.
You have to leave the country. So we are stuck in a situation where slavery is abolished long ago, but we have virtual slaves. They cannot leave their job because there's no other job to go to. In the States, I've seen the system work because the people have the dignity. I saw the Attorney General in California many years ago when Donald Trump was first appointed leave her job, because she felt the wrong thing was happening and she would rather leave her job than participate in it. She had that luxury because she could go and find another job. It's a big economy, massive economy. She could go and work on her own. She could find another job, maybe even a better job. Here you lose your job, you have nowhere to go. It is a hard decision. It is very, very difficult to say to a man or a woman who got children, who got family, who got a mortgage, do the right thing and leave the job. That is tough. And it's one of the problems we have. And it's one of the reasons that corruption continues, because people necessarily have to turn a blind eye. I'm not excusing them, but I'm saying it is so difficult that we have to find a way around it. We have to find a system that allows people the dignity of doing their work properly and of saying, no, you can't say, cut corners on this road and boil it down to 80 million. It will need $100 million to build properly. And if the contractor hasn't done the first part properly, say to the contractor, I'm not signing off on this thing because you haven't done it properly without fear of repercussions. And if we can get to that system, we're better off. We're not there. We see too much vindictiveness. We see too much personal involvement by people at the very top. And the way around that, I'm afraid of going back politically, the way around that is that in the entities just like GPL, just like Guywood that we're talking about, you must have opposition people on the board who are supervising and watching what's going on so that they can ensure the contracts are awarded clearly and fairly. They could ensure that the employees employed by those entities are qualified and have the luxury to do the job properly, so that if the minister calls and says, hey, why you didn't sign off the contract, the employee can say, knowing opposition in the board will not allow him to be fired because your man didn't do the job properly. So my solution, and I've been saying this for years, is once you get an opposition-controlled parliament, you revise the legislation, and Guywa, right now the board is PPP appointed. The 5 board members, 2 must be PNC and 1 must be from a third party.
Right.
If I was an engineer working at Guywa, I could be black, brown, or purple. So you look at me, you might believe I'm loyal to one party or the other, but I would know that if I do my job properly, at least 2 people on that board will be defending me.
Right.
And therefore I have the luxury to do my job properly. And Worse yet, if I don't do my job properly,
Right.
if I'm corrupt, if I sign off a contract and the posts fall down,
Yeah.
those same 2 board members from the other side that don't like me will then have an excuse to fire me. And the people who I think are supporting me will not be able to defend me.
Yeah.
You need on each board, GPL board, GAIWA board, GEA board, EPA board,
Gaia,
all of them.
Yeah.
2 from the opposition, 2 from government, and 1 from a third party. And then your engineer will be able to do his job properly and will be scared if he doesn't, because he will be fired if he doesn't do his job properly. It's the way forward.
And how simple is that? I'm saying it's very simple.
I mean,
it's
so. And it can be done with a third party in parliament that provides a majority opposition in parliament.
You know, people sit down and you get this excuse all the time, and I think it's something that has to be said. They sit down and the big excuse right now is, well, there is no opposition for me to vote for. And I always combat that by stating, you see, you've gone off. You've already missed the problem. You've already missed how you're solving the problem. You've already missed that the issue is in the system. Now, if you are looking for political parties to come in and save this country with the system that currently exists, and either PNC or PPP and go back and forth, the 2-party scenario, we have already lost. You have solved nothing, as you can tell, over the last, 57 years. That's the reality. What I explain to people is that what you need to do is put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 third parties. Vote for anyone except PPP and PNC, because the more parties that are in parliament is the more accountability that will exist. Okay? The 2-party system with PPP and PNC alone means one or the other wins. Okay, and once the one has full power, you get what you have here. You're frightened. As Tim defended, you get hired to do a job to run GPL, and you're frightened to say no, and you're frightened you get fired. So you just do any trash work that is given to you. All right, that you're left with. But the reality is, again, I'm not going to repeat everything he just said, but what Tim just said is, if the board of GPL was not all PPP assigned or all APNU assigned when they were in power, then that CEO of GPL would not be afraid to do his job properly. Because right now, the CEO of GPL should be standing up and saying, well, you're not putting in the right systems, we don't have enough money to do our job. As a matter of fact, it's in the news right now, the GPL employees are about to go on strike because GPL only offered them a 7% increase when all the other public sector workers have gotten 10% because they're a semi-autonomous body, so they're determining their own raises.
Yes.
And GPL apparently has no money now. So the joke about this whole situation is, these guys should be standing up because, just so you understand how GPL works, all the money is government funded. They do charge customers, and then that money still has to be approved for spending. And I know this from the GRDB board, still needs to be approved by the ministry, right? You don't just willy-nilly get to spend money, all right? So the reality is, you're already managed at the top. It's already micromanaged. And the GPL CEO should be coming out right now and stating, this is nonsense.
Right. So let's go back to
even calling the posts, call out that scenario.
Because what you said is right. Most of these are semi-autonomous. They call it semi-autonomous, but they're not. Agencies. They have a budget, but for them to spend money, the expenditure must be approved at the ministerial level.
Yeah.
That's immediately problematic because you're going right back to the government.
Yeah. What are we on this board for? What are we voting? Yeah.
Coterie of family and friends.
Correct.
That the money must be spent on. So, what should happen, and in fact, it would be easy for it to happen, is that each of those semi-autonomous agencies should every year be submitting their budget to Parliament. And an opposition-controlled Parliament can then review that budget, just like Parliament now reviews the annual budget and approves the budget. Instead of going to the ministry, they go straight to Parliament, and Parliament reviews the overall budget and approves it. So the next year, when the same semi-autonomous body turns up, Parliament is in a position to see how money was spent last year, what the results were, and approve it. It leaves the ministry out. But it gives that semi-autonomous body the power to award its own contracts and do its own deals. So you have GRA, you have GPA, you have GAIWA, all of them dealing with their own finances. Let me go further. the RDCs, the NDCs, dealing with their own finances, awarding their own contracts, answerable to Parliament, not to government. And therefore, the same contractor who now sees that he bid the lowest, but he's been bypassed, and is afraid to do anything because he knows if he quarrels now, he'll never get another contract.
But now he can go challenge it. Yeah.
He now has the luxury of saying, boy, I quarreling because their contracts being awarded by GAIWA, by GPL, by all the NDCs, and I'm bidding for all of them, and they are not you.
Right.
So he now has the luxury of going elsewhere for his contracts. He's not a slave to a single slave master anymore. And that's what we need. We need that kind of liberty, that kind of dignity for those same contractors to have. And let me tell you, if the contractor in wherever you want to put him, in LBI or in BV, hires you to put in a concrete post, and the NDC hires that contractor and the post falls down, that NDC will be so immediately answerable to the people there who get in blackout that it will never happen again. That contractor wouldn't get another job with that NDC. Yeah. He therefore finds it in his interest to do the job properly because the NDC is going to be very afraid that those people who now get in blackout are going to say to them, in 2 years, you're out.
Yeah.
We getting other people in the NDC.
Yeah.
Each of those bodies needs to be autonomous. It can happen with an opposition-controlled parliament.
Autonomous.
It needs an opposition-controlled parliament. There's no other solution right now.
Sir.
I've seen it with the PNC and I've seen it with the PPP.
Now we're going to bring up an interesting article here. We're going to be an interesting chat. It's the accountability one that the Vice President said at his press conference yesterday, I think. So I'm going to turn it for our viewers here. So what it is, let me read it out for you for all of our PPP followers. I'm laughing because I'm looking at the comments and I'm talking whole day that I Steve bought GPL electricity because that's all they can talk about. They in blackout, sitting at home in blackout saying I TV and electricity. But it says here, you had 3 of the leaders of the party there. He's referring to Nigel Hughes and the AFC. He says you had 3 of the party leaders there saying we are not prepared to take questions from the past, from 4 or 5 years ago. Jagdeo lamented. He later added, if they can't be accountable now, how would they be accountable if they have political power? Now, this made me laugh. Let me start there.
Why? What was your response to that?
So right off the bat, I'm not sure. If you are stating that there would be no way to hold them accountable, it means that you're admitting that there's no way to hold you accountable right now.
There's truth in that.
Okay. So that's the first thing.
But both sides enjoy that.
But that's the winner-take-all issue that we have. That's why we need a minority parliament, right? An opposition-held parliament, right? Vote third party. Nonetheless, it's an interesting conversation that he has managed, well, at least the news, the media outlets have managed to make it seem like the only people that are not held accountable is APNU AFC for what they did from 2015 to 2020, including the rigging, the attempted stuff, and so on. And I find that even more funny because, and I can say this to even all the PPP people out there because you can't refute it at all. They can blame the judges, they can blame the courts, and they can do anything they want. Nobody has been held accountable, okay, for anything that has happened between 2015 and 2020. All right?
So there is truth in what Mr. Jagdeo said.
There is truth in what he said. And I laugh because your mantra, he just admitted that there is no system.
So when AFC APNU had the majority, they did what they wanted, there was no accountability. And now PPP have the absolute majority, they do what they want, there's no accountability.
Right.
There is truth in what he said, except that we're talking about pots and kettles. Both of them look exactly the same.
Right.
We're in Animal Farm right away.
Absolutely.
Good. Now, the fear I think that people have about third parties is that if you simplistically look at a party saying, can you win? I think you're starting wrong because by definition, the third party is not going to win the election. But in the context of Guyana, where we have the 2 large tribes and the 2 large tribal parties, the third party can hold the balance in parliament so that whichever of the 2 tribal parties has got less votes, they will find themselves hand in hand with the third party and controlling parliament, the second pillar in the Westminster system. That's what we need.
Yeah.
So whichever of the two large tribal parties wins, they're in government, but the third party's role must be to ensure the independence of parliament by opposition control with the other large party.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I said it the other day, and it's becoming more and more clear in my mind. I'm trying to define right and wrong. And the fact is that it is always right to do what is beneficial for your tribe. I think that's historically has to be the definition. So you have your people, whether it's your family, whether it's your country, whatever it is, your tribe. And if what you're doing is beneficial for your tribe, then it's the right thing to do. Now, at a personal level, that boils down to morality.
Yes.
But at a larger level, for example, an ethnic level, it's no longer about morality. It's about competition. It's about survival. It's about facing and confronting a threat from another tribe. And what we have in Guyana is the two tribal parties trying their best to perpetuate that view that their tribal supporters will support them, because if they don't, that other tribe will win to our detriment, threatening us, marginalizing and excluding.
Yeah, divide and conquer.
No. There is a growing number of Guyanese who recognizes that our tribe is Guyana.
Yes.
Our tribe is no longer Afro or Indo.
PPP or PNC.
It is mixed up.
Yes.
And if we can appreciate and see that larger tribe, then you stop worrying and being afraid if you're going to be marginalized by that tribal party or that tribal party, and you realize that both tribal parties are hurting Guyana.
Yeah.
And once that realization hits you, and we see it hitting more and more people, the AFC built their house on it. And the AFC, at the end of the day, were getting 7 seats in parliament. They were getting 35 to 40,000 Guyanese voters voting for them.
That's right.
Those people were recognizing that Guyana is the tribe. We are Guyanese.
Yes.
And if you're Guyanese before you're Afro, or if you're Guyanese before you're Indo, that's where you need to be.
Yeah.
That's when you can start having a conversation, objectively saying, look, these people are doing the right thing, or these people are doing the wrong thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Think about the others.
Immediately
Absolutely.
you do that, what happens as a Guyanese, as a patriot, if you see a party that is excluding half of the country, that party is harmful.
Yeah.
And I agree with what Mr. Jaglio said, that these people refusing to answer questions about their role in the elections, they are showing that they are willing to accommodate harm to the country. But I would also say that the PPP's refusal now to accept the levels of corruption that's facing us all, the shoddy work in the contracts facing us all, the money being spent, the increase in the debt ceiling, the fact that there's no accountability, and he himself said no need to account for funds taken out of the Natural Resources Fund. Now, that's unforgivable. Because if you're a patriot and if you love this country and if you really want to say Guyana first, we got to know how the money's being spent. We have to see it spent properly. We have to see an infrastructure that grows that we're proud of. Not concrete posts falling down.
Yeah. All right. I say this as quickly as I can because I think it's such an important topic, and I don't like to run on it, but I just want to explain why Tim would say the growing number. In 2011, there was a minority government in Guyana. Okay? In 2015, when everybody was done and vexed with PPP, corruption and vindictiveness and bullyism and cronyism, etc., whatever the words were used, everyone wanted, you felt the movement, they wanted to get rid of PPP and bring in a new political party. APNU AFC had merged, and APNU AFC won that election by one single seat in 2015. Okay, one single seat is worth, give or take, 6,000 to 7,000 votes. That's 6,000 or 7,000 people decided who the president of this country is, who the government of this country is.
Out of 300 and something thousand votes.
Correct. Right? So all that power is in that little number, razor thin. Okay, 6,000 X's determined who the government was. Fast forward to 2020, when everybody was upset with APNU and what they did to Guyana, and how the economic state was, blah, blah, blah. Right? And at the end of the day, PPP won the 2020 election on one single seat. Right now, it's one single seat. Another 6,000 to 7,000 people are all it took to determine who the government of this country is. All right? To determine whether it was Irfan Ali or David Granger. Okay? 6,000 people. And those six... Now, why I say this, it's for everybody to learn. You see all the people that are commenting, all the people that are attacking and nastiness on both sides. And if you go on to any of the opposition pages, you can read the same nastiness. All right? Because the fact of the matter is, these two groups are the majority in the country. And what's amazing about it is they've done a wonderful job of canceling each other out. So when you sit here and say, there will be no other government other than PPP or PNC and things will never change, the joke about it is that we actually have the easiest system to make the change now with how razor thin both of these large groups votes are counted together. So if there's 200,000 voting for PPP and 200,000 voting for APNU, those votes cancel each other out. The only votes that matter are the 6,000 or 7,000 in the middle.
For that third to third seat.
For that third to third seat in Parliament. So all of you there that have this weird, like, oh, I don't know if things could ever change and that hopelessness. Listen, 6,000 people around this entire country only need to vote for any other third party and there will be a minority government. Now, here's what's interesting about that. If you were to take all the votes in 2020 from the third parties that ran, it would and combine them all, it's almost 10,000 votes. We would have had a minority government right now in this country.
I didn't do that much. That's an interesting observation.
Yeah.
You see, I think both parties are worried about that. What happened with the AFC is that although they accomplished that, they didn't have the self-awareness or the competence to implement what was the solution. Mm-hmm. Which is to side with the opposition in Parliament, not to join up with them, hoping to take over government, but to side with the opposition in Parliament, to pass laws to ensure that both sides are present in the decision-making processes. So both sides on the GPL board and on the Guy Oil board and on all the other boards, both sides there. Look, if you look at Chronicle, one rag, Chronicle newspaper cannot survive on its own because it's not a real newspaper. Mm-hmm. It is a government propaganda machine. Yeah. It was a propaganda machine before 2015 and it was a propaganda machine for the other side after 2015. And there was a slew of firings and a slew of hirings to get your own loyal people there to write your kind of propaganda. If Chronicle was run by a board that we're talking about, two opposition, two government, one third party, it would be a professional newspaper selling professional news. Yeah. It would no longer be spouting the government rhetoric because the opposition and third party would not allow it. Right. The journalists who are hired there
would have to be unbiased,
would be approved by both sides and therefore would have to be professional. And if they showed bias, it would have to be within the realms of journalistic integrity. Mm-hmm. We're not seeing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just another, any entity in Guyana you think about, the example applies. Yeah. And it can be done with a third to third seat in Parliament.
Agreed. Guys, I'm just going to bring up one more topic because we have about 7-8 more minutes, and this is an interesting chat. The last clip there, Robbie, is the duty free on vehicles. I just think it just needs to be spoken about because I just think it's ridiculous. This is in the news a couple of days ago. GRA vows to combat abuse of duty-free vehicles for re-migrant. And this line is the one that caught me. Protect state revenue. What do you mean to protect state revenue? You and I have spoken about this how many times? GRA, we know from everything else. Is it less or let's call it 1% to be?
No, it's less than 1%.
Less than 1%, right here, right now, from a senior counsel lawyer in this country that deals with this nonsense every day. Less than 1% of the luxury vehicles that are brought into Guyana pay full duties.
Because you can't afford it. It's prohibitively expensive. When I say prohibitively, it's impossible. You cannot buy a vehicle that's over 2,000 cc's and bring it into Guyana and pay duty on it because you're paying 3 times the value of the vehicle new.
Right.
In taxes.
I think everybody knows the problem. We know the problem. But
the end result, all right, go ahead, because I know where you're going.
But at the end of the day, for you, again, as I will always say, I was sitting down with a PPP person recently, and we said the conversation was why. I asked why don't they lower duties on vehicles, and they said, why do you need duties to be lowered on vehicles? I said, well, people need safer cars to drive for their families. People need, for their work. People need four-door pickups for their work. And it will be more of an asset to them driving because they'll have more resale value.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. I don't feel the need to justify it. I work hard.
Right.
And if
I want a nice vehicle.
I want a nice vehicle.
Gotcha.
I should, and I can pay for it. I should be able to bring it in.
But I'll give you the response.
Every single government minister and every single member of parliament doesn't work as hard as me.
Yeah.
They bring it in because they give themselves duty-free allowances.
Right.
It's not fair. It's not a revenue raise.
It doesn't earn money.
It's designed to make me a second-class citizen and make them first-class citizens.
Right.
It's that simple. I don't need to justify why I want a nice car.
All right, let me keep going. Agreed. You don't need to justify it. I'm with you on that. If I want a nice car, I should be able to buy a nice car. So the person turns to me and says, well, it's also for the deterrent so people buy less cars. So I said, because I said, well, a tax is there to earn an income for the country. And if it's not earning an income for the country, then why is the tax there? So they said, well, it's also for a deterrent. I said, okay, let me just break this down simply. I said, if a man, a woman, a professional, anyone wants to buy a car, and they sit down at home and said, I really need a car to carry my family around. They never have the conversation that says, I can't afford a Prado because of the duty, so I'm not buying any vehicle. Obviously, what they do is they go and they buy the CRV, they RAV4, they this, they that, right? A worker who has a construction company sits down and says, I really need a pickup to do my job. I can't afford a four-door pickup, so what I'm going to do? I'm going to buy a Premio. They don't do that,
If someone from the government side told you that the inordinate duty on vehicles over 2,000 cc's is because we got too many vehicles in this country, it's not even worth an answer.
Right.
Because clearly they don't mind too many vehicles 2,000 cc's and less.
Yeah.
So it's not even worth dignifying that with a response. That's total garbage.
Good.
And I don't plan to go down the road at all.
So it really ends up where we are right now. And we're just pointing out the ridiculous situation that is these duty-free vehicles. And again, the reason I think this is so important to Guyanese, the reason especially the free thinkers, especially the people that are open mind, especially the people that are not tribal and, die-hard PPP or APNU, is that you need to understand that for both of these governments, the PNC and the PPP, to not have lower duties on these vehicles to this point, when people need it for work, people need it for their safety, people need it for their investment, people need it because they want it, that's their prerogative. For them not to allow people to have these things needs to be a reflection in your mind of their mentality and how they view you.
I know you're running out of time. There's one thing in the back of my mind I wanted to say. The amount of vitriol that you get in responses and people commenting on your program, it's neither here nor there. It doesn't bother us. I think we know most of them are trolls, and we know that they are in one of the two camps anyway. Mm-hmm. It's all well and good. But I do want to say to the people who are listening, quietly, thoughtfully thinking about it, the kind of people who are listening are not the kind of people who will be ranting and raving and making noise. And therefore, you might not be aware that you're not alone. There is a large minority out there who is offended, who is seeing the problem, and who is looking for a solution and is recognizing the solution is not in the two parties. So the fact that there is silence from that group should not bother you, because intrinsically by their nature, those intellectuals, academics, professionals, the quiet people going to school, going about their lives, doing the best they can, trying to raise their families and paying their mortgage, they're not going to be kicking and screaming and shouting so that they draw attention to themselves. But I promise you, you're not alone. As Kian said, there were nearly 10,000 people in 2020 after the disastrous work by the Visionless Ranger for 5 years. There were still 10,000 people who, instead of voting PPP, still wanted to look, hopelessly at that time, but still wanted to look for a third party. In 2011, when there was genuine hope in AFC, and the AFC betrayed that hope, I know, there were 35 to 40,000 people in Guyana who were voting AFC. That is a large minority. So don't be disheartened by the fact that you're not seeing this huge wave of very visible, very loud, voluble support coming out for third parties, you are not alone. There are enough of you there to make a difference.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, just to touch, because I know this is always a topic, well, those people that have felt burned by the AFC, Tim and I are we are them.
Well burned, yes.
We feel burned, okay? We felt burned. And you know what we did? We went to the next best thing. We did not stray away from the third party concept. Unfortunately, one didn't work. We are going to find another one, okay? Because the system has to be that of a minority parliament. And the only way that can happen is with a third party. We got involved with third party politics. And our hope is that whatever third party gets into parliament maintains their independence and ensures that the government and whoever is in executive is held accountable and works towards the betterment of all Guyanese, not just being tribal like we've seen AFC do, and we have learned from those mistakes.
The tribe is Guyana.
The tribe is Guyana. Guys, on that note, we are out of here. Thank you all for joining us. Again, my apologies to South Rumbelt people. Hopefully you guys can watch it when your electricity comes on very soon. It's very unfortunate, but we gotta keep working for something better. And we're here doing our best, even with just our voices, to make sure that things are held accountable so that things like this don't happen. All right? Because that has thrown all those people off. I mean, it's 2 weeks before Christmas, Tim. That's and the water supply in South is another problem. I feel so bad for them.
They'll get it fixed by then.
Yeah.
It was unforgivable.
If we were in Parliament, if there was a minority government in Parliament right now, I promise you, this should never have happened. Okay? On that note, guys, thank you for joining us. We will be back here next week. You guys have a wonderful weekend and be safe out there. The roads are very busy. I know people going to be getting paid their 10% and things like that. I don't think it's enough, but it is some. I hate saying that, but it's Christmas. Be positive. Take a little money with your retroactive and do something nice. Go and relax. Take it easy mind. I know it's been a rough year. I think we all felt it. So take a little blessings that you can get right now, and next year we'll deal with all the rest of those problems. All right. On that note, guys, take care. Have a great weekend.
Take care, everyone.